Hi everyone, I am here with a story. So Sherm took my friend back the book that she let me borrow last night, and she sent down another one. This one is from the same collection, I believe, and this one is called Angels and Wonders, True Stories of Heaven on Earth. Looks like this. I can't remember who the author was, but I think it's the same one because it looks familiar. Okay. So this one's actually like 10 or 11 pages. The first one's really long. So usually before each one, there's either a Bible verse or some kind of quote. And this one is a Bible verse, Matthew 11:4 and 5. Jesus said to them, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind regain their sight, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised." That's when John's disciples, John the Baptist, John sent them to ask Jesus if he was the one to come, the Son of God, or if they should expect someone else. And Jesus told them that to go back and tell John. Okay. So this story is called For Love of Logan. Tammy Carroll grew up in a small Indiana town, married in 1986, shortly after her high school graduation, and had her first baby, Jacqueline, a few years later. It was a routine pregnancy and delivery, no trouble at all, Tammy recalls. She and husband Todd settled into a peaceful life on their farm, enjoying parenthood and planning a larger family. There was no warning of what was to come. Tammy became pregnant again in 1993. Everything seemed normal until her 6th month, when an ultrasound revealed problems. Tammy's obstetrician, Dr. Diane Oken, gently broke the news. The baby had chromosomal abnormalities. I mean, what's that, like Down syndrome, or stemming from a condition that is always fatal. That's not always fatal. Dr. Oken said the child, a girl, would die either during the next few months or shortly after birth. What is it? Tammy and Todd were heartbroken. They named their unborn daughter Megan and hoped she would They named their unborn daughter Megan and hoped she knew how much they loved her. Eventually, Tammy gave birth, but there was little to celebrate, for baby Megan was stillborn. Oh, I don't know how people go through that. My mother had died when I was 20, Tammy said, and at the time I thought there could be no greater pain than losing a parent. But now I had to admit that the pain of losing a child was even worse. Also difficult was the seed of doubt that had been planted. Could this happen again? Did the Carrolls have some kind of genetic defect? They already had one healthy baby, though, remember? Worse, what if Megan was the last child they would ever conceive? Tests on Tammy and Todd showed nothing amiss. However, and eventually Tammy became pregnant again, but now she was nervous, afraid to get her hopes up. In addition, although Tammy had grown up as Southern Baptist, she hadn't been to church in years. For many reasons, I had sort of given up on God, she admits. At times I felt that even if he was listening to me, he probably didn't care. But gradually, as this pregnancy progressed, Tammy felt herself talking to her Heavenly Father. "God, please give me a healthy baby," she asked each day, Megan's death still fresh in her mind. Even if she and God had not been close for a while, he surely wouldn't ask her to go through another loss like that, would he? Time passed, and despite her worry, Tammy had no problems. Dr. Oken monitored her carefully, doing a chromosomal test as well as extra ultrasounds. The baby, a boy, whom the Carrolls had already named Logan, looked vital, and completely normal. Tammy was due on April 9th, 1995, but when she went to the office for her scheduled checkup on April 5th, Dr. Oken decided to hospitalize her early the next morning. I think she knew I was worried and that it might be better for me to be induced in a controlled setting, Tammy explains. The following morning, Todd and Tammy drove to Clark Memorial Hospital in nearby Jeffersonville. Tammy was admitted, labor began, and everything seemed fine. Baby Logan was closely monitored, and his heart was healthy and strong. Todd and Ruthie, Tammy's sister, were with her, and as things progressed, the grandparents assembled in the waiting room. It would be a joyous event, not like the last time, they all assured each other. New life was budding. Logan was almost here. By late afternoon, Dr. Oken had delivered 2 other babies and was as ready as Tammy to meet little Logan. Her contraction strong and healthy, Tammy was taken to the delivery room. She was almost to the end now, and as the nurses cheered her on, she pushed and pushed. "One more," a nurse shouted. "He's almost here." Tammy pushed, but Logan's heart rate had suddenly slowed, and at 4:42, as Dr. Oken took him from the womb, there was no heartbeat at all. There was a loose umbilical cord around the infant's neck that slid off easily. His mouth and nose were bulb suctioned on the perineum, and the fluid was clear. Dr. Oken wrote in a later report, but the baby's APGAR score, the test that determines newborn health, was 0. He wasn't breathing. "Call code," Dr. Oken quickly told a nurse as she carried the lifeless infant to the warmer on the other side of the room and gave him oxygen. "Come on, Logan," she murmured. "Wake up." Another nurse started chest compressions. There was no cry, no heartbeat, no pulse. The baby's eyes remained closed, his limbs limp, his collar an unhealthy gray. "Logan," Tammy asked. "Todd, why isn't he crying?" Todd stood in shock, watching nurses running here and there. No one was saying anything, and the silence was horrible. "Logan, Logan, please cry." Ruthie realized something terrible was happening and hurriedly left the room. Within seconds, it seemed an emergency room physician raced in, followed by Tammy's pediatrician, who had been summoned from her nearby office. One of the nurses phoned Children's Hospital in nearby Louisville, Kentucky, which had a neonatal unit and specialist on call. A respiratory therapist passed Tammy, then an X-ray technician. "What is going on?" Tammy screamed, beginning to sob. Tears streamed down Todd's cheeks. A nurse tried to comfort them. "We don't know anything yet," she whispered. It couldn't be happening, not again. She couldn't lose another child. "Logan, please breathe." Dr. Oken came to Tammy's side to finish the delivery process. The afterbirth and everything. The specialist, she explained softly, had intubated the baby and were forcing air into his lungs. Someone had injected medications. Someone else was taking x-rays. Everything possible was being done to Tammy. Everything possible was being done. To Tammy, it was all a horrible nightmare. She had thought everything was under control, and now she realized that nothing was. Only God could help Logan now. "Dear God," she whispered through her tears, "please don't do this. I don't think I can handle it. Please save Logan, please. I'll take him in any condition." Medical personnel continued to work over the baby, but Logan never showed any signs of life, nor did he respond to any of the advanced cardiac life support efforts by the code team, says Dr. Oken. At 5:15, 35 minutes after delivery, the neonatal specialists from Corsair and Clark Hospital personnel agreed to discontinue all resuscitation efforts. Logan was pronounced dead. Unobstructively, a nurse baptized Logan. Another weighed him, 8 pounds, 3 ounces. cleaned him, wrapped him in warm blankets, put a little stocking cap on his dark head, and laid him in Tammy's arms for a last goodbye. She held him close, searching his perfect little face. "Logan, don't go. I need you," she whispered. But her son's eyes were closed, his body completely limp. "Dear God, please." She had to let go, to accept the inevitable, but somehow she couldn't stop praying. Dr. Oaken and the pediatrician stood by Tammy's bed. The others had left the delivery room. "We don't know what happened, Tammy," Dr. Oaken said. "We won't have any answers unless we do an autopsy." Tammy blinked back tears. Perhaps an autopsy would save another family the suffering she was enduring. "All right," she agreed, "but I want to hold him for a while." Of course, someone brought a consent form, and still holding Logan, Tammy reached over and signed it. Dr. Oaken left the room to break the news to the Carroll relatives in the waiting room. Soon they streamed in, murmuring words of encouragement, mingling their tears with Tammy's and Todd's. Todd cuddled Logan, then passed him to Ruthie. The nurse took some photographs. Occasionally the baby's body moved slightly, and the first time it happened, the nurse went out to the front desk and alerted Dr. Oaken, who was talking to another physician on the phone. Dr. Oaken explained that such a phenomenon was called agonal breathing and was just a spasm or a reaction to the medication the baby had received. How unfortunate, she thought, that the Carrolls had seen it. It was almost like Logan dying twice. At 5:55 p.m., morning was coming to an end, at least for the moment. It was time everyone knew to turn Logan's body over to the hospital. Tammy's stepmother was holding him, and she bent over him to say a last goodbye. Once again, his little body went into a spasm. Tammy's stepmother looked and looked again. "Tammy, he's gasping," she cried. "Look, his leg moved." "It's just a spasm," the nurse said, Tammy answered. "I don't think so. I think he's breathing," Grandma explained. "Ruthie, get a nurse." Ruthie did. In an attempt to calm the family, the same nurse came quickly to put her fingertips on the baby's chest. Then she reached for a stethoscope and listened. "Wait right here," she shouted as she ran out of the room. Dr. Oaken was still filling out forms when the excited nurse approached her. She said, "The Carroll's baby has a heartbeat." And I responded, "The next one to have a heart attack is going to be me if this doesn't stop," Dr. Oaken reports. But when she reached the now silent room and approached Tammy's stepmother, she could see that the baby was turning pink. "He's alive?" she asked the older woman. Tammy's stepmother could only nod her arms, trembling. Astonished, Dr. Oaken took the baby from her. His little chest was rising and falling rapidly. "He is alive," she cried. "Let's take him to the nursery." Nurse and physician ran with the infant out of the room. Tammy began to weep. She had been grieving for over an hour for her child, and now it seemed the cycle had started all over. "Don't do this again. I can't lose him twice," she wept, as Todd, still thunderstruck, tried to comfort her. "We don't know what's going on, Tammy," he explained. Tammy did. It was just a cruel joke. For some reason, Lori's little Logan, his body was still reacting to treatment, and everyone thought, but such things were impossible. Her son had been dead for an hour and 18 minutes. No one could come back to life after all of that. And yet she had asked God for a miracle, hadn't she? Medical personnel began reappearing in the delivery room with bulletins for Tammy and Todd. The neonatalists from Kosher Children's Hospital had returned, dumbfounded. They were currently examining Logan in the nursery. His disbelieving pediatrician was also there, along with doctors from all over the hospital, responding to the quickly spreading news. Despite the impossibility of it, Logan was breathing on his own and appeared healthy. He had been placed in an oxygen tent, and tests were proceeding. Of course, there were undertones that were not mentioned, at least not at this joyous moment. A baby clinically dead for over an hour would no doubt have severe brain damage, as well as non-functioning optic nerves, tissue damage, seizures. A list could be endless, but Tammy was joyful. She told God she would love Logan no matter what, and she intended to keep her promise. For now, everyone was in a state of awe. It was, as Dr. Oaken described in later, like seeing the shadow of God passing by. Baby Logan was transferred to Kosher Children's Hospital and remained there for 5 weeks. He slept for the first 2 due to medication, reducing the possibility of seizures, and then gradually began to awake. Although brain-damaged babies often don't suck, he nursed immediately. Tests showed that his eyes and hearing were completely normal. The story touched many. Medical personnel at Clark Hospital dubbed him Lazarus, because remember, Jesus rose him from the dead. Strangers approached Tammy on the street with tears in their eyes. Even an elderly lady wrote to tell the Carrolls that the same thing had happened to her at birth, and no one had ever believed her mother until now. What happened to this very special baby? No one really knows. One theory is that Logan might have experienced the same kind of situation as a drowning victim, when systems shut down for a time, then spontaneously revive. They always try to explain God away, don't they? However, Logan had never actually been alive after birth, and Dr. Oaken, who had seen nothing like it in her years of practice, is grateful that she was not the only specialist on the scene. If I had been alone, she told Tammy, I might have concluded that I had made a mistake, missed a tiny sign of life. But there were other physicians there, including neonatologists, and we all agreed Logan was dead, and then he was resurrected. Today, Logan, diagnosed with cerebral palsy several years ago, has a rich and satisfying life. Despite being confined to a wheelchair, he is bright and fun-loving, attends a regular school, and is an inspiration to everyone who meets him. Onlookers might wonder why Logan was not completely healed, but those who know Tammy... Sorry, I think I missed a page. But those who know Tammy and the unconditional love that she has always given her son understand that this is the best part of the miracle. Why did it happen? Maybe God wanted to show us that miracles do happen, to say, I'm still here and I still raise people from the dead, Tammy says. And maybe it's not my job to ask why, but just to keep telling others and keep saying thank you. She is willing to carry out the heavenly assignment. What else can one do with such a wonder? I've heard that happen before, where they passed this baby was dead and they passed it around to all the relatives and they were taking turns holding him and stuff, and it came back to life. Actually, it might have been this story that I heard about, or it could have been another one. God does amazing things, and a lot of times people don't believe it until it happens to them or in their family that they see. But stuff like this is true, and it happens.